January 9th, 2007. You're standing in a conference room in Espoo, Finland, watching a grainy webcast from San Francisco. On screen, a man in a black turtleneck holds up a slab of glass, and the executives around you start to smile. They're smiling because they're not afraid. Why would they be? You work for the most dominant technology company on Earth, and the thing on that screen doesn't even have a keyboard. 900 million people carry your phones. You sell more devices than your next 3 competitors combined. Half the smartphones on the planet run your software. This week, that empire will make the most expensive judgment call in business history. To understand what happens in this room, you have to understand what Nokia was, not a phone company, a nation's pride and industry's king, and for 1 decade, the closest thing technology ever had to an invincible empire. Rewind. The company began in 1865 as a paper mill on a Finnish river. It made rubber boots, cables, televisions. Then in the early 90s, it bet everything on one idea: mobile phones for ordinary people. The bet paid off beyond imagination. By 1998, you overtook Motorola as the world's #1. By 2000, the company was worth nearly $250 billion, at one point, over half the value of the entire Finnish stock market. You walk factory floors in Finland, Germany, China, India. Together they ship close to 1 million phones every single day. Logistics so precise that business schools teach it. Margins your rivals can only dream about. The 3310 becomes a global legend, so durable people joke it could survive a war. The company practically invents the smartphone category itself. Cameras, email, apps, years before anyone says the word iPhone. By 2006, revenue passes 40 billion euros. You employ over 60,000 people. In dozens of countries, the word for mobile phone is simply your company's name. This is what total victory looks like. And that's the problem, because inside every empire at its peak, victory hardens into doctrine. And doctrine says, we know what a phone is. We wrote the rules. Which brings us back to that conference room in January 2007. The keynote ends in San Francisco. The crowd is screaming. In Espoo, someone turns the lights back on. The first verdict comes fast: no keyboard. Business users will never accept it. The engineers run the numbers, and honestly, the numbers agree. The new device has no 3G. The battery is weak. It costs $500. Yours cost $50. Every spreadsheet in the building says this is a toy for rich Americans. Then comes the moment that will haunt this company forever. In a test lab, technicians drop a rival touchscreen prototype onto concrete from 5 feet. The glass cracks. The room actually relaxes. It fails the drop test, someone writes. Consumers won't buy it. You watch the report travel up the chain, and at every level the conclusion sharpens. A senior executive tells the press the newcomer will remain a niche product. Internally, the language is blunter. It's a toy. The king has spoken. Here's what makes it tragic instead of just wrong. Your own labs built touchscreen phones years ago. Internet tablets, app stores. Prototypes that looked eerily like the future. Leadership shelved them. They threatened the margins on what already sold. A handful of engineers argue anyway. They say the point isn't the hardware, it's the software, the touch, the feel. They're told the market data doesn't support the concern. You watch them pack up their arguments and go home. Some will quit within the year, and then nothing bad happens. That's the cruelest part. 2007 becomes the best year in company history. 437 million phones sold, 7 billion euros in profit. The flagship N95 flies off shelves. Every metric says leadership was right. In November 2007, a global business magazine puts your CEO on its cover. The headline asks, 1 billion customers, can anyone catch the cell phone king? You frame it, you hang it in the lobby. But you notice something the celebrations drown out. The rival sold barely 1 million units its first quarter, yet it captured something you can't graph: desire. People line up overnight. Nobody has ever lined up overnight for a spreadsheet-optimized handset. July 2008, the rival opens an app store. Within months, developers are making fortunes writing software for a phone your company called a toy. Your platform pays developers in paperwork and pain. The gravity of the industry quietly shifts. Inside your walls, the response is to reorganize, then reorganize again. Committees form to study touch interfaces. Every decision needs sign-off from 3 departments. You watch a company that once moved like a speedboat start turning like an oil tanker. The core problem has a name: Symbian. Your operating system was engineered for keypads and tiny screens, a masterpiece of 1998. Bolting touch onto it is like teaching a typewriter to browse the web. The engineers know, the roadmap doesn't care. 2009, the company finally ships its touchscreen flagship answer, the N97. You hold the launch unit in your hands and feel the plastic creak. Reviewers call the software sluggish, the experience broken. One executive later admits it was a catastrophe. Meanwhile, a second predator arrives, and this one is free. Google's Android is handed to every manufacturer on Earth at no cost. Samsung, HTC, Motorola. Your old rivals suddenly have modern software overnight. You're now fighting two wars. Inside, a civil war breaks out. One faction fights to save Symbian. Another builds a beautiful new system called MeeGo. A third whispers about surrendering to Android. 3 armies, 1 budget, and every quarter of infighting is a quarter the enemy doesn't waste. The numbers begin to tell the story leadership refused to hear. Smartphone share. 50% in 2007, under 40 by 2009, falling through 30 as 2010 ends. The stock has already lost more than half its value from the announcement week nobody feared. In September 2010, the board does something unthinkable for a proud Finnish institution. It hires an outsider, a Canadian executive from Microsoft named Stephen Alop. His mandate is simple and brutal: figure out what's broken fast. What he finds horrifies him. Products delayed by years, software teams paralyzed by politics. The proud engineering culture that conquered the world now spends more energy defending territory than shipping phones. He starts writing a memo. You should feel the vertigo of this moment. 4 years earlier, this company judged the future from a throne. Now its own CEO is about to compare it to a man standing on a burning oil rig in the North Sea. February 2011, the memo leaks to the world. We are standing on a burning platform, it says. Competitors poured flames on our market share. The company took no decisive action while the world changed. Everything you feared in 2007 is now official doctrine. Days later, the answer drops like a guillotine. The company will abandon its own software entirely and bet everything on Microsoft's Windows Phone. Symbian dead, MeeGo dead the moment its first beautiful device ships. Engineers weep openly in the hallways. The market delivers its verdict in hours. The stock craters 14% in a day. Analysts call it jumping from a burning platform into the icy sea. Buyers stop purchasing the old phones, but the new ones don't exist yet. Revenue enters free fall. Then come the cuts: 10,000 jobs, 20,000. Factories that once shipped 1 million phones a day fall silent one by one. In Finnish towns built around your plants, the empire's collapse isn't a headline, it's the neighbor's mortgage. September 3, 2013. The announcement crosses the wires at dawn. Microsoft will buy the entire phone business, the factories, the brand licenses, 32,000 employees, for €5.4 billion. Less than 3% of what the company was worth at its peak. Do the math with me, because the numbers are the whole story. 2007, $250 billion legacy, half the smartphone world. Can anyone catch the king? 2013, sold for the price of 1 year's old marketing budget. 6 years, that's all a Keynote needed. And the bitterest detail: nothing that killed you was secret. The touchscreen was in your labs, the app store was in your memos, the engineers who saw it coming sat in your meetings. The empire didn't lack information, it lacked the courage to act on it. There's an epilogue, and it matters. The remaining company, networks, patents, infrastructure, reinvented itself and survives today as a telecom giant. Empires can be reborn, but the throne of consumer phones, once surrendered, never came back. So return one last time to that conference room in January 2007. The smiles, the drop test, the word toy. Nobody in that room was stupid. They were something more dangerous: successful. And success had taught them the one lesson that kills empires, that the future must resemble the past. Because here's what the spreadsheets could never measure. Disruption never arrives looking like a threat. It arrives looking like a toy, underpowered, overpriced, easy to laugh at. By the time it looks like a competitor, the war is already over. So carve this into the boardroom wall: the empire law of Nokia. Market share measures your past. It says nothing about your future. The only question that matters is whether you'll destroy your own empire to build the next one, because if you won't, someone in a black turtleneck will. Subscribe, the next empire is already falling.